Welcome to the Wandering Dotterel. So because of all of the jobs I've had and all of the things I've been through, my body was damaged.
What?
I've had a lot of injury to my body being a laborer and not being able to obtain decent places to live, becoming a drug addict for many years, and then having multiple surgeries, upwards of 22 surgeries. And I also contracted Lyme disease right before I was 11 years old. And it wasn't just from one tick bite or one experience with ticks. I had one experience where I was told to be seen but not heard. And I went into the bushes in Alberta, Canada, and received thousands of tick bites. And then again in Nebraska in the US, and then again in Colorado in the US, and then again in Wyoming in the US. So I've had multiple experiences with tick bites and being severely ill and having toxic shock syndrome after obtaining all of those tick bites. And then, of course, the swarm of bees. But my body was basically hammered. I've had neck surgery, back surgery, and multiple internal medicine surgeries, which I wouldn't want anyone else to have to deal with. It's terrible. But you have to laugh because the things we do carry consequences. The things we do have a consequence. They carry a consequence. And if you don't have a good job or a car or medicine when you get sick, things happen to your body.
Uh-oh.
And like I said, having multiple encounters with ticks and then bees and growing up in a home where there was violence and addiction problems, my body was resilient, yes, but there were consequences to everything that I had been through. And over time, I learned that I could get job after job. And so I was a laborer for many years. And I had to either walk to work, ride a bicycle, or catch a ride with someone. And it was very hard on my body. But it also kept me in shape in a way that I became more resilient to what I had been through. And at one point, I had 23 jobs.
What?
Where I did lawn care for people. And it was grueling. It was hard, but it taught me a good work ethic. And then I was also an elder care provider for about 15 years, and I took care of elderly people doing their Girl Friday stuff. Some of the people called me Girl Friday because I did everything. I picked up their prescriptions. I filled out paperwork. I had appointments, took them to the doctor, did their yard work, got interviewed by their family to make sure I wasn't stealing money from them. And I was just a young person trying to find my way in the world and trying to have a family. I was trying to fill in the gaps where I hadn't found those relationships that were conducive of healthy behavior. And so along the way, I learned a lot of unhealthy behaviors, and it took me years to unlearn those things. The funny thing about having so many different jobs, I've learned who to trust and also to weed out the shady ones. There were a lot of times that elderly people needed someone in their family. They needed that one kid to check up on them daily, or to make that phone call, or to drive them to the grocery store. And I became that one latchkey kid that fit the scenario. So as a young person, I grew into being the Girl Friday, being there for the people that the family had forgotten about. And it was actually quite sad, but it was also very fulfilling. It was encouraging for me to know that there were actually people that were out there that were stable, that, you know, had a few extra bucks to help me out and create a job for me in their busy life. You know, cleaning somebody's house or doing their dirty work is not so bad when you compare it to the other things that I had to do to reach my goals in life. Just to get a GED was a huge deal for me. I had to ride my bicycle. I had no money. When I got to the college at the time, which was in downtown Phoenix, they told me, they rejected me immediately. They said, "You don't have any money. You haven't been to high school. We can't help you." But they didn't know me. I stood my ground. I looked the lady directly in the face and said, "Look, you pay for my GED. I'm going to sit here and take the test. No matter how long it takes, I'm going to pass." And I did. I sat down. And I did. Like I said, I looked the instructor right in the face and said, "You pay for my GED test. I'm going to sit here and take the test no matter how long it takes me." And 8 hours later, I passed my GED test without any formal education. I mean, I knew how to read, I knew how to write, and I knew how to do basic math, because by that time I had dozens of jobs. But I also had 2 small children and no vehicle. And that day I had $2 to my name.
What?
And no food. So I know what hard work looks like. I know what obstacles look like. But once again, I don't condone running away from home. I don't condone jumping ship and dropping out of high school. Unless if you have money and you can go to college immediately and get some type of certificate, it's going to be really hard to find a job nowadays. This is your host, the Dingy Dotterel. Take it from someone who knows. Being raised in a hardcore military family where everybody's been in the military, and they just think you will understand narcissism and abuse and violence and addiction, and you're going to grow up into a loving, caring, knowledgeable person. That's so far-fetched, it doesn't even make sense. And I didn't even understand that until I was much older, after I had tried to obtain jobs, tried to go to college, where people ostracized me and made fun of me because I had lumps all over my body from Lyme disease. What? I was withdrawn. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to read and write properly or well enough to write college papers. I was the outcast. I looked funny. I was out of place. My relationships really sucked. They really stunk. And so there was never really given to me a manual or an understanding of how to deal with all the crisis I had. I was just constantly shutting down, and people just thought I was an addict and a weirdo and a user. And I wasn't any of those things. I was just a confused young lady who had a really tough upbringing with people that were not creating a conducive environment for me to grow in. It was like putting a wild dog in the cage of life. And the wild dog would just run around and wreak havoc wherever it landed until eventually I had those advisors at the college that I attended that sat down with me and told me I was worth it, that I was cared for, and that they would help me get some clothes and a place to stay and a car. But that took me several attempts to get over that hump because I was constantly running from everything because I had learned to run away as a young person. It's not an easy thing to overcome. Being in foster care or jail or abuse or neglect or medical neglect, none of those things create an environment for a kid to grow. Arguing and violence create confusion. They create havoc for a child that lasts their whole lifetime. So I suggest to you, if you're listening and you're going through any of this, reach out for help. Get some help. It took me years of counseling. It took me years of falling flat on my face and doing stupid things that I would never want anyone else to do. And now that I know better, maybe somebody will hear me and stop their own behavior and say, hey, this makes sense. I need to get some help. I need to stop doing this before I end up dead. Here's another Ranger Rick joke for you. What do you call a bear caught in a rain shower? A drizzly bear. You have to make jokes. You have to learn how to laugh at your past and say, I learned my lesson the hard way. I won't ever do that again. Some of us don't ever get a chance to say that. If I would have been kidnapped or unalived when I was running away as a kid, I wouldn't be talking to you now. I wouldn't be able to make jokes and laugh. What's a prehistoric sleepover called? A dino snores. I learned a lot from my upbringing. I learned how not to trust people. I learned how to run away. And I learned how to make my own way. And eventually I did, but I had help from certain people. But that's another story. Before I ever knew I needed help, I remember sitting in the 5th grade and being pulled out of class. And a counselor taking me into a side room and offering me a piece of gum. And I didn't know what was going on. I was told that my parents called the school and asked me to get counseling. And I looked right at the counselor and said, you're not going to get anything out of me. You might as well just stop now. And the counselor's mouth gaped open and she said, I like how you chew your gum. And we both started cracking up. And I said, what do you want? And she said, your parents are saying that you don't listen. You're quiet. You never talk. And you don't have any friends. And I said, oh yeah? I wonder why that is. And that was the end of the story. She never came and got me again. I was jailed multiple times when I was a kid. Yes, you heard me right. I was jailed. The sheriff came and picked me up, putting me in handcuffs and taking me away. And you can say, why? What did you do? Well, I put water in the lawnmower once, and I knocked over several Harley Davidsons and tried to lift them up when I was a little kid. But that's not what got me in trouble. What got me in trouble was when I was about 11 years old, I was sent to go live with some people that I didn't really know. And they seemed nice enough, but this was one of my parents' ideas to help me out, to send me to live with someone else. And what I did was I got into the jewelry box of one of the people, and I took all of the jewelry and coins out of the jewelry box, put them in my pockets, and took them to school and gave them all away.
What?
And boy, did I make everyone mad. And you could probably ask again, why'd you do it? Well, I was being abused. There were things that were going on besides the violence and the drinking and the drugs and the addiction and the narcissism that we won't get into. I can just say as a girl, there were predators. There were people around me that were doing things to me that they shouldn't have been doing. And so I acted out, and I acted accordingly. I took the stuff and I gave it all away. I was trying to be nice out of my pain. In my pain, I was trying to be a good kid and not blow the whistle on the people that were hurting me. I was trying to protect them even though I was a small child. And it didn't end up well because I ended up in the sheriff's office in front of the sheriff who for 4 or 5 hours he put me in a holding cell. And I'm just a little kid, and he kept saying, if you don't talk to me, I can't help you. And he eventually pulled me out of the holding cell because I wouldn't talk to him. And I said, what are you going to do with me? And he said, well, I can't do anything with you. You need to go home. And as soon as I was dropped back off at the people's house, they rejected me and said, she can't come here ever again. She's a bad child. She needs to go home.
What?
And I just went along with it because by the time my dad got there, he was angry. And I'll remember the day forever because that day there was a giant rattlesnake in these people's yard. And of course, him being a hunter and a poacher and a military guy, aggressive and controlling, he just grabbed a shovel and chopped its head off.
What?
And threw it in the car. We took it with us. It was a day I'll never forget. Welcome to the Wandering Daughteril.